Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP's wife, who usually didn't go out to lunch with friends, began acting strangely with her electronic devices. She claimed to have a new female friend and even showed messages about meeting up. However, he became suspicious and followed her, discovering she was meeting her best friend's boyfriend behind their back. Furious, he exposed their affair on social media and told the wife's parents, leading to a divorce. Now let's get into the story. My wife didn't usually go out to lunch with friends. I would have supported it, but she was a little socially awkward, so most of her friends were online. She had one best friend that we both knew well named Leah. She'd see her as often as possible, but she lived 45 minutes away. We had an open phone and computer policy between us, but my wife was such a sweet little angel, I never felt the need to check either. She was on it a lot, but usually still interactive with me and made it clear that giving me her attention and time was a priority. That started to change when she stayed in the bathroom longer, sometimes even locking the door, and seemed irritated if I asked her anything while she was absorbed in one of her electronic devices. Well, I became officially suspicious when she asked me if she could go out to lunch with a new female friend. She even went so far as to show me the messages between them, but only a few about meeting up. Sure, her name was programmed as a girl's name, but how did I know who it really was? How did my wife even know who it really was? I asked her to call this girl so I could say hi, but she said she couldn't right then because she was at work. She assured me they talked on the phone lots of times when I was at work. That was a little more unnerving than comforting. When the day came for her to meet this girl for lunch, my wife became even more insistent that she was going, and I needed to trust her. After she left in her little old car, I got into mine and followed her using our family location app. But she turned it off after 13 minutes of driving, so she didn't want me to know where she was. That was disheartening. I drove up and down the street where she turned it off. It was full of restaurants and shopping. After looking for 8 minutes, I was about to give up because I felt like she could be spying on me at this point, and I'd have no idea. But then I saw her car in the Applebee's parking lot. So I parked at a distance and wore my prop hat, sunglasses and scarf into the restaurant. Before the hostess even greeted me, I saw them. My wife and Leah's live-in boyfriend. So that's why she didn't just lie and say she was meeting Leah. I couldn't believe it. She was seeing another man behind my back and it was her best friend's boyfriend. Why the hell did she feel the need to do this? My heart was pounding and sure, my face was red. When the hostess tried to seat me, I told her I wouldn't be staying after all. I snuck over to where I could get a good picture of them, then went back to my car. I waited, determined and eager to catch them in whatever they were doing. My wife got into Leah's boyfriend's car and I followed them at a distance to Leah's house. Her car wasn't in the driveway and my nauseating suspicions only grew. They went into the house and I sat in the car, wondering what I should do. My wife didn't make very much money, but her parents would send her pretty nice sums of money each month for various reasons. I decided if I caught her cheating on me, I would tell her parents they had very high expectations for their daughter which didn't involve her cheating or getting divorced. Then I decided to go inside. The front door was locked, but it wasn't hard to find a spare key unlocking. It was louder than I wanted it to be and I heard a few movements as the door opened. I entered and closed it behind me, hoping they thought it was Lee returning home unexpectedly. The last noise I heard sounded like it came from the kitchen, so I slowly walked there, keeping my eyes peeled. When I got there, no one was there, but there was a door leading to the basement. I didn't open it, I just locked it. If they were in there, they'd be found eventually. I searched the rest of the house and didn't find them, so they were definitely stuck in the basement. I left the house, locking it and returning the key before driving home. Before I even got home, Lee called me. She said she just found my wife and her boyfriend in the basement together. I played dumb. She was in disbelief and I could hear them all arguing and trying to explain things. I apologized to Leah, told her I was driving and asked her to call me back when she figured out what was going on. She called me back 1 hour later. She was crying as she explained that she took her boyfriend's phone from him and checked messages. There were messages spanning back 5 months between my wife and him, and it was clear that their relationship was much more than friends. They had close as early as 4 months ago because that was the first time it was mentioned in texts. They spoke about when Lee or I would go to work and how lonely they were. They complained they needed more attention and could handle more than one partner. I was furious. I apologized to Lee again for her having to go through this with me. I asked her to send me screenshots of what she had because these cheaters needed to be called out. Once I got them, I sent them to my wife's parents. I also posted them on Facebook tagging my wife. Lee did the same, tagging her boyfriend. Social media exploded with hate comments towards them both. They were shunned. My wife called me 3 hours later because she still hadn't come home. I imagined because she had a feeling I knew what she was doing. She had a sad tone as she said sorry to me, asking what she could do to make this better. I told her there was nothing she could do. I already told her parents and planned on filing for divorce. She wailed and started crying when I told her that. Just then her mother called her on the other line. She hung up on me to answer it. When she called me back, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. It felt good to hear her suffering similar emotional torment to what she caused me. She tried to me that she didn't have anyone now, and I asked her how that was my problem. Then she tried several different tactics to get me to take her back or show her a flicker of mercy. Even going so far as to offer me a pass to have clothes with another woman. I declined and told her I'd be able to have intimate with anyone I wanted. Now, because I was single, she tried to contact me every day throughout the divorce, but I ghosted her. I had proof that she cheated, so I kept my house and didn't have to pay her a dime in alimony to wrap up my story. Leah and I have both become good friends after going through this, and I wanted to share this story in hopes of helping other people to cope with sudden change and unfaithfulness. Today's second story. In this story, OP met their wife 4 years ago, and their relationship was initially good, but it later became strained due to financial issues. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the wife had an affair with a coworker and became pregnant with his child. He discovered the affair, moved out, and filed for an annulment. Now let's get into the story. I met my wife 4 years ago and got blindsided by her blatant and unapologetic infidelity. Just like every relationship, we had highs and lows, but I never imagined that the lows were that low. We got married 2 years ago and things were blissful. We both worked in the same work industry, but at separate companies. I was a manager and she was just coming up, and it would not be acceptable to work together as per company rules, because we worked at separate companies and were nearly an hour away. I never believed cheating would occur because things had been so good at home. I could be working for 12 hours and come home to dinner, intimacy, and all the things anyone would love to come home to after a long day. Not to say I didn't do the same, because I always did. One of the things I loved to do was to bring her her favorite flowers every week on my ride home. She gushed every time I came through the door with them, and more so when they opened up to display their full color. Nearly a year into the relationship, we began to argue, but it was nothing more than simple misunderstandings. Although I was concerned, I also attributed it to some of our money issues. She hadn't been making as much, and although I was the primary breadwinner, what I made didn't always afford us the luxuries we had loved to engage in months prior. I always told her things would get better, and they certainly did. I got a raise and so did she. However, the arguments didn't subside the way I had imagined they would. Fast forward to March 2020 and the pandemic put us both on our backs financially. I qualified for assistance and promptly took it to make sure we'd have the essentials. She, however, did not qualify and was understandably upset about it, and when some other companies outside of our industry were hiring, she went for it and got a job. I at the time was collecting close to what I was making pre-pandemic weekly, and we discussed it would not be advisable to go and look for a job. That would essentially put me backward career-wise. This meant I would stay home and help out while she worked, and with both incomes, we'd be just fine. Prior to her getting the job and during, I supported her by making sure she had her paperwork filled out. I got up early and helped her get her lunch. I sometimes showed up to her job to take her out to lunch and took care of most of the other duties around the house she wouldn't always have time for. Little did I know that her sudden happiness had nothing to do with just finding a job and getting back to a much more stable financial status. From what trickled truth she gave me, The affair started almost as soon as she got the job in May and continued until I went back to work in August, leaving the home unattended in November. I became aware of the affair when I came home one day to grab something I forgot and found the door chained when I got home. When she finally came to the door, I found a bath drawn with candles lit and her wrapped in a towel. The chain was very unusual and sent me into high suspicion because we lived in a secured building that needed a key fob or a code to enter. I began to look around and noticed a shadow behind the bed showing on a nearby mirror. I yelled out for him to stand up and face me, and for the first time I realized the guy that was cheating with my wife. Someone I had met when I picked her up from work so many times. My wife formally introduced me to him, and at that very moment I felt sick to my stomach. He promptly left and I just sat there feeling stupid. I asked why, and her response was to get angry at me for finding out, and when pressed further told me she felt a connection. From there I knew I needed to get out and mistakenly never had an exit strategy. Due to COVID, my funds were severely depleted and moving out was not an option yet. So I had to brave it for the next 2 months before I would be able to move. It was by far the most numbing time frame I have ever dealt with. We slept in separate parts of the home and carried on like roommates. I wanted to be civil, not for her, but for my own peace of mind. That, however, was not to be. As I found out, she had become pregnant as a result of the cheating, and I only tore the wound back open, and I really began to feel like things couldn't get any worse. She also continued to flaunt the relationship in front of me and made going to work agonizing, knowing what was likely going on when I was not home. What's even worse is when I moved out, she refused to pay the rent and I kept getting notices about it from the management company. In January I moved out and started to save money for a lawyer and sought therapy. I should note that she never believed I'd file, and I made sure not to let on that I would. It bought me plenty of time to consult a lawyer who went over all the details and originally wanted me to file for divorce but later decided that an annulment would be better. The lawyer also drafted letters to ensure would not be on the hook for the lease and paperwork with the IRS to have our tax debt split. We filed at the end of May first year after when I believe the affair began. Since then, it's come to light that she may have been involved with more than one affair partner. And when I say more than one, I mean 3+ suspected. As of 1 week ago, we had her served at work because it had also come to my attention that she had moved out of the apartment and surrendered the keys. I got an email from the management company. Now I wait, as she has 35 days to respond before it goes into default and the decree is issued. I will update later as more news comes to light. Thanks for reading. Update. So it's been just over 3 months since my soon-to-be ex had been served back at the end of June. Her lack of response to being served only let me know she either didn't care or wanted it to be over, just as I had. As I sit here typing, I was informed that she retained counsel and intends to fight the annulment. I was pretty shocked to find out after calling the courthouse that she had filed for this extension at some point at the end of August, which would have been nearly 4 weeks after the deadline given. My mind is in a whirlwind because I can't believe for a second that she actually wants to reconcile with me at this point. Because of the fact that she did give birth to the affair partner's child at the end of July, she may be looking for someone to raise her affair baby and not for a genuine connection with me. I really don't know for sure because I don't read minds, but the feeling that she may try to sue me for paternity enters my mind, and I won't lie and say I'm not worried about it. After months of therapy, I come to understand more than before how mentally abusive my marriage was, and I have no doubt that if she is the same person, she's tried almost anything to try and hold me hostage. The day she and her counsel speak with the judge is this Friday, and words of encouraged judgment and advice would be greatly appreciated on how to deal with this news.